Welcome to Learn with Joy Champs, where learning is fun and engaging. I'm Lei, the founder and principal of Joy Champs, and I'm thrilled to have you with me here today. With more than 30 years of experience and having taught more than 2,000 pupils to excel in their studies, I'm excited to share my knowledge with you. In this video, we are going to dive deep into the world of graph-based science questions, focusing on the essential concepts and skills necessary to tackle such challenges successfully. Our lesson will focus on the primary purpose of graph and where the independent and dependent variables will be plotted on the graph. And we'll be demonstrating these skills and concepts with an intriguing example question. Which of the following graphs shows how the mass of seed leaves changes during germination? So, buckle up and get ready to expand your skill and knowledge and be able to tackle science-based questions like a pro. Together, we'll help you unlock your full potential and excel in your science exam. Before we dive in, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting lessons and tips to excel in your studies. Let's get started. Before we start the lesson, let's take a look at some basics of a graph. What is the purpose of a graph? A graph is used to communicate information visually. Second, a graph allows us to see patterns, and it also helps us to see relationship between the variables more clearly. Typically, the independent variable, which is the variable that you change in any experiment, is plotted on the x-axis. The x-axis is actually the horizontal axis. The dependent variable, which is the variable that you measure or the results of the experiment, is plotted on the y-axis. The y-axis is the vertical axis. Let's dive into today's question, graph-based question with recall. The question reads like this. Which of the following shows how the mass of seed leaves changes during germination? 4 graphs are presented. You have to pick out the correct option. Now, this kind of graph-based question is called, in order to do them, you must be able to recall certain science concept so that you will be able to pick out the right answer. So in this case, you need to understand what is germination and what are the parts and functions of a seed. Otherwise, you will not be able to know which is the correct graph that shows the changes. So now let's take a look at the parts of a seed. Typically, a seed has 3 parts. The seed coat, which is to protect the seed, the embryo, which is the young plant, and the light brown portion, the seed leaves, which serves as a food store to supply food to the young plant for it to grow. Then, germination. You need to know that germination is the process whereby a seed sprouts and grows into a young plant as shown in the diagram on the right. A quick tip. To answer any graph-based question, you need to be able to describe how the y-axis changes with the x-axis. You need to recall for this question that during germination, the stored food in the seed leaves is used by the young plant for growth. Hence, the mass of the seed leaves should decrease as the height of the young plant increases. So with that, let's hop over and look at the 4 graphs given and eliminate those which is wrong. Let's look at the first graph, but before we do so, let me change this pointer to laser so you can see clearer. Now, you must understand that as you move towards the right on the horizontal axis, the height of the young plant increases. And when you move along the y-axis, the mass of the seed leaves increases. So I always tell children, if you want to understand and be able to say the pattern, use your finger and you trace the line, and as you trace it, read out the pattern in your heart silently. So let's try. As the height of the plant increases, the mass of the seed leaf increases. Now, is that true? We know that this is incorrect, because when the food in the seed leaves has been used up, the mass should decrease. It should not increase. So this option is not correct. Then let's take a look at option 3, and let's trace it and read out the pattern. As the height of the young plant increases, the mass of the seed leaf stays constant. This is definitely wrong. Why? When the stock food is used up, the mass should drop. It will never remain constant. Now hop over and we look at option 4 now. Let's trace the pattern and read it out. As the height of the young plant decreases, the mass of the seed leaves decreases until a minimum point. After that, as the height of the young plant increases, the mass of the seed leaves also increases. Can this be true? Answer is obviously no, because once the stock food in the seed leaves is used up, the seed leaves dries up and falls off. It will never get a chance to increase in mass again. So option 4 is eliminated. That leaves us with one and only option. And what does it say? As the plant's height increases, the mass of the seed leaf decreases. That is correct, because the stock food has been used up, the mass will definitely start to drop. So the correct answer to this question is option number 2. Boys and girls, I hope you understand how to tackle a graph-based question now. Remember, always describe what changes in the y-axis with reference to the x-axis. Now, let's take a look at another question and allow yourself to practice the next question to see if you are able. Now, let's hop on and take a look at the second question. The graph below shows the changes in the mass of a young plant and its seed leaves during germination. Which of the following best explain the changes shown in the graph? I always tell students, before you attempt to get the correct answer, always highlight what are the important information that the question has presented to you. So in this case, the changes in the mass of a young plant and its seed leaves. So this graph is actually showing you how the mass of the young plant changes during germination and how the mass of the seed leaf changes during germination. Next, explain. Which graph best explains changes shown in the graph? So we want the statement that explains the changes best. So with that, now let's take a look at the graph itself. The y-axis records the mass and the x-axis records time. So it is important to understand how the mass of the young plant as well as the mass of the seed leaf changes with time. A quick tip: for all graph-based questions, always remember to describe how y changes with x. And for this question, you need to recall that when a seed germinates, food in the seed leaves will be used up and its mass should decrease. Next, after the young plant has grown green leaves for photosynthesis, the mass of the young plant should start to increase. Now, let's take a look at the graph closely. Can you see this part? At the initial part, we start at a certain mass, but the mass of the seed leaves has continuously started to decrease during the experiment, while the mass of the young plant drops initially but then increases. So why is this so? Okay, you notice as the seed germinates, the mass of the seed leaf drop because the young plant is using up the food for growth. But though the young plant is growing, the seedling is growing, its mass is not increasing as fast as the rate at which the stored food is used up. So therefore, it appears as though at the initial part, the mass of the young plant is decreasing, while it is actually increasing, because you can actually see on the right in the graph, all right, the young plant is actually growing bigger and bigger, okay, but the overall mass is actually dropping because the food stored in the seed leaf has been used up and the young plant is not capable of making food yet. Okay, then you study the graph further and you notice there's this point X, and you also notice that after X, all right, the mass of the young plant starts to increase. So what does that show? It shows that point X is the point at which the leaves of the young plant starts to appear. So after you have gotten all this information, we now hop over to eliminate those options which are outright wrong. Okay, let's take a look at option number 2, because I see the word roots there. Now, this question does not mention anything about the root. There's no mention about the roots at all in the question. So therefore, this option will be the first to be eliminated. Then we will take a look at option number 4, because option number 4 says that the seed leaves provide food for the young plant until day X. Now, if you look at the graph carefully, at day X, the seed leaf still contains food. It means that it can still supply food to the young plant until all the food has been used up. So option 4 is definitely wrong. Then let's take a look at option number 3. It says that the young plant only starts to grow after day X, and day X is the day at which the leaves appear. Now, if you look at the diagram on the right, you realize that the plant has already started growing way before the leaves appear. So therefore, option number 3 is incorrect. And that leaves us with only one option. The leaves appear around day X, which is true, because immediately after day X, right, the plant has started photosynthesizing, therefore it is now gaining mass. So boys and girls, the correct answer to this question is option number 1. You have reached the end of this exciting lesson on graph-based science question. A quick recap. The purpose of graph is essentially for visual communication, show patterns and relationship. The independent variable is always plotted on the x-axis and the dependent variable on the y-axis. The example question we used today shows that seed leaves mass always decrease during germination. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson and feel more ready to master science-based graph question. Now, help us spread the knowledge. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Learn with Joy Champs for more exciting lessons to excel in your studies. Leave a comment below with your thoughts and questions, and let us support you. Let's conquer graph-based question together.